Hey, everybody, welcome to week 218. Yes, and if you look outside, if you have windows and you can look outside, that is called Cleveland blue skies right there. That's called Cleveland blue. Actually, it's gray. So, yeah, man, it's just depressing. There's a reason. I saw that they're going to be building a new stadium with a dome, which they really need. So that'd be good for those Clevelanders. But anyway, we've got special things going on today. We got a lot of people jumping on. Lots of volatility out there. And so what are we going to do? This is not the first rodeo that any of us have been in. And if you remember right, 2 weeks to slow the spread, March 2020, none of us knew what was going to go on. And we were all having to navigate. Well, I don't know that we're there again, but lots of volatility and craziness in the world as well as in our own country. So we're going to talk about that, what you can do as a business owner and a leader in your businesses to make it through this and keep your sanity and keep your company. So we've got Austin Palmer from Destination Wealth Advisors, steady hand on the tiller, which is good. We need that. And we got Adam and Jack. So I know Jack has some Cliff Clavin, current events that we really need. Adam, anything before we release Cliff?
Um, no, I think Cliff was going to talk about it, but so I'll steal his thunder. The Senate did not pass the tax legislation that the House overwhelmingly passed in bipartisan support. And by bipartisan support, Gary, I will remind everybody, this was like post office naming bipartisan support. This was not, all the Democrats plus one
Yeah. Yeah.
support, right? So it yeah, it's disappointed. I mean, the hang up has to do with continuing to fund some family provisions associated with the child credit, which I understand, a concern about, hey, is that adding to the deficit? But it is disappointing because there were some really good business provisions that were in there regarding bonus depreciation and taking the percentage back up to 100%, and then also um, fixing the problems with the R&D credit, among other things. So, maybe they can decouple the child portion of this, but then at that point, maybe you lose all the Democrats in the House. I don't know. Regardless, it's disappointing, especially being an election cycle. I don't see a lot happening. So, not to bring the doom and gloom show that's out there. But for most small businesses that we have anyway, the end of bonus depreciation isn't the end of the world. I mean, if you're kind of in the, 500 to $700,000 of asset additions every year, and you're making money, you still have Section 179 available, so it's not the end of the world. And from an equipment purchase expensing standpoint, but it is a level of ridiculousness that is quite ridiculous.
Yeah. 5-year amortization versus one kind of sucks, right?
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, it really does help, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like, getting to the point of the discussion, oh my gosh, we might be slow walking our way into recession or some sort of downturn. Encouraging people to buy shit, usually good policy. I don't know, Jack. I mean, I read that somewhere that's usually pretty good policy, is encouraging businesses to invest and buy shit. Versus leaving them on the fence where they could say, maybe I will, maybe I won't. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm all for buying fun shit. I like my fun stuff too, so
Yeah.
I'm all good.
Yeah.
All
I
right,
think you
so
guys
I
are
will
into the
add,
gardening thing, right? So that's some expensive stuff.
and I will add that a comment made by our own Senator Tom Tillis, quote, is it needs to go back in the oven and come out with our tax reform next year, meaning after the election. So Yes, I guess I don't need those notes anymore. So we'll go on to the next thing since you took all of
Well,
that.
thank
No,
you for that addition, Jack.
all right. Totally Cliff Clavin, not on topic, but I'm going to say it anyway, which is there was an article a few weeks ago about the return to the office hitting a milestone that the highest rate of people coming back to the office was in July, and that there are people who believe that it's going to continue, that people will be coming back to the office. They'll be required to come back to the office. You have CEOs around the country, around the world saying, yes, you will be coming back. Hopefully they won't do the snafu that some of our local banks here did, which is you will come, and they did not. And then what do? I mean, it's kind of a threat without consequence for the most part, unless you want to lose a lot of your workforce. So, as I said, 62% of the respondents believe that corporate employees will be back in the office within the next 3 years, which is a huge jump from when they were looking at the numbers in 2022 and through 2023. So, the belief that people will be coming back into the office one way or another, or a hybrid. But no, the work from home, completely work from home, probably they think will die on the vine in the near future. Some SBA news, that bad news for the SBA, and they're getting in trouble with Congress, which is that the SBA, so recall that the EIDL program was the SBA was a direct lender to the borrowers, whereas most SBA programs they're the guarantor. So you have a bank like B of A or Wells that is lending money, and then the borrower goes through certain hoops, and then the SBA says, okay, Wells Fargo, you lend the money, and if there's any shortfall at the end of the day, and you do everything that you're supposed to do, like collect collateral, liquidate everything you're supposed to, and there's a shortfall left, then we will pay you that money. So therefore it gives Wells some comfort in issuing this loan. Well, with the EIDLs, those were direct loans. So the lender is not a bank. It's the federal government, it's the SBA. And so, and we had talked about this. We've talked about this for the past 3 years about how the government does things and they put things in motion, but they don't have the infrastructure to do what needs to be done after they implement it, whether it's enforcement, whether it's collection, whether it's due diligence on anything. And so what they've done is they've created a situation where you have the SBA in their lender capacity having to go and collect on collateral from borrowers that have not paid on their loans. They don't have the infrastructure to go and do valuations of properties, put it on the market, find a seller, run the sales process for this collateral, and then get the money. So what they've done is, in a moment of brilliance, they've gone back to the people who have not paid them and said, hey, do you mind helping a brother out? And would you mind going and finding a buyer for us and going through this liquidation process, and then, kind of sending us the money when you get done with that process? So, which is, you can tell by my sarcasm, is just ridiculous. There's a focus on companies that are in bankruptcy. So it's not everyone that they're asking to do this, but so you have a little bit of help with the bankruptcy trustee potentially going through this process in their duties as a trustee in a bankruptcy process. But so it's just, it's just, when I read through this article, I'm like, you got to be kidding. I mean, it's just, you're really going to ask people who have no ability or capacity to do what you're asking them to do, and they can't even pay their bills, and you're asking them to go through this process, which is not inexpensive, nor is it quick. So anyway, on the better side of things, I found information about this new program that the SBA is putting in, and they call it the Working Capital Pilot Program. And they call it a pilot program because it hasn't been fully authorized by Congress. So it's kind of like, let's try and see what happens kind of thing. But it does run through July 31st of 2027. So I don't know how I guess they anticipate Congress will fully say and give the green light on it. But it's an extension of the SBA's 7A program that's already in existence, but it's focusing on working capital. So it is a working capital line of credit. And why that is different and important is that, first of all, it's a line of credit. So you tap into it when you need it. You can only use it for working capital needs, and it's meant to be a temporary thing. Whereas, okay, you need working capital to get you through maybe seasonality. You get that income at Christmas, and then you pay back, pay back the line back to zero, and then, as you need it. So it's meant to be for a fluctuating need, not for a long-term permanent need. And so there's more information on that on the SBA website. And it says it can provide businesses with up to $5 million in guarantees line of credit. They are in order to encourage, and again, this is Wells Fargo and B of A making the loans and the SBA guaranteeing them. But what they've done is that they will have an 85% SBA guarantee, whereas most loans or guarantees are less than that. So they're basically saying, hey, we got your back even more if you take the risk in giving this working capital loan to ordinary business folk. So those are kind of the things, and I have some information about the stock market, but I won't steal Austin's thunder about things like that and about the economy, other than to say that there's a lot of finger pointing as to why things happened the way they did earlier this week, and why the industrial averages or the stock markets dropped, the indexes dropped, both here, but also Asia being kind of at the forefront of that, and then the effect that comes back this way. Interestingly, again, another Cliff Clavin thing is my 18-year-old has become interested in the stock market and how things work. And so usually when I have a Wall Street Journal article that I'm like, hey, would you like to read this? He's like, nah. He's like, yeah, let me see it. I'm like, okay. So he's wanting to invest, and he's like, should I invest in this? Should I invest in that? Apparently there's well, I shouldn't say this because but I'm gonna say it anyway. It's down the road. He is invested in the company that puts out Grand Theft Auto, and apparently they're putting out a new version of that in 2025. So the question is, does he invest now or does he wait, kind of thing. And so it's very interesting to see a young person be interested in this kind of stuff. And I'm definitely going to send him the recording of this particular session and what Austin has to say about all of it. So anyway, again, finger pointing in various directions as to who's at fault, finger pointing at the Fed for not lowering interest rates sooner than now. And they said that they aren't going to lower them this month, maybe next month. So maybe this is putting more pressure on them to lower the interest rates. So anyway, that's I'm obviously not an economist or a political pundit, but that's my 2 cents.
So before Austin takes the mic, you tell me, and you can validate if this is true, Austin, but I read it on the internet somewhere that Michael Milken has been hired to package up all of these EIDL things and package them and sell them as junk bonds. Is that true?
No idea.
I'm just kidding. I think he's still in prison. I don't know.
Wasn't he on TV a few years ago being interviewed for something? I don't know if he was in prison or not. It seems like I saw an interview.
I think he did go to prison at one point, but that was so long ago that who knows. But Austin, talk to us about, like, as a business owner, business leader, just an individual, but a lot of us, that are on here are business owners and leaders. What do you do, when you have all kinds of opinions being thrown out there and just navigating this part of your life, which is like the market?
It's interesting. The financial advisor in me says any pullback in the market, if you have a time horizon beyond 2, 3, 5 years, is just an opportunity to buy something on sale. There's a quote, y'all may have heard it. The market has predicted 9 of the last 5 recessions. The gentleman who said that was an economist.
9
That
of the
makes
last
people
5.
excited.
That's pretty amazing.
Right. Paul Samuelson received the second awarded Nobel Prize in economics in 1970. That quote is from 1982. If you update, and what he meant is a downward drop from a peak to a trough of 20% in the market is an indicator of a possible recession. If you update it through today, it's 16 of the last 8 recessions. But interestingly, I've been doing this 25 years, 7 months. I've had 3 recessions, 3. And if you think about them, you know, starting with the dot-com bust through 9/11, war in Afghanistan, Iraq, that was the first one, the great financial crisis. And obviously the shorter, most recent was COVID. Yeah, there's some bad things. There are a lot of layoffs going on. Some of these companies, prices may have gotten a little bit ahead of themselves, but those were 3 pretty big things. I mean, the dot-com, we had companies that the stock prices were going parabolic and they had no earnings,
Yeah.
right? It was just on the hope that they might. We're not seeing that now. Inflation is coming down, albeit at a slower pace than what anybody wanted. Now we get a one-off number that is a lot slower than anybody anticipated, and all of a sudden people are saying recession, and you know the market's off 5 or 6%. That to me is almost silly. I'm not buying it. That almost presupposes that the Fed cannot cut 50 basis points, cut 75 basis points, or do other things, and they can.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good information. I mean, it is interesting in an election cycle in particular, and think about the last one. We had COVID, we had lots of division going on in the country. The George Floyd riots had been out, like it was just a mess. And we still have kind of a mess. We have people that are completely unwilling to, you know, they vilify each other while they're doing the same thing, which is, it's just like
Right.
nuts. You know, and there's like common sense has left the room, but quite frankly, privately held business owners, they're the ones that have to be steady, you know, on the rudder, and they're the ones that typically have common sense because they have to make payroll, they have to meet obligations, they can't just print money and do whatever they want to do. So in this market, back to like your expertise, Austin, what do you recommend to a common sense audience?
Stay the course. I mean, always be prudent. I joke around with clients. People want us to, whatever your business, be correct all the time, but oftentimes that's a coin flip. So I would err towards the side of being prudent. You know, if you think things are tight, if you see your business going down a little bit, or you have some trepidation, okay, it's probably not the time to ramp up hiring and spending, right? I mean, that's just common sense prudence. But I don't think a volatile market or a bad print on, you know, data, or the Fed being behind the curve in terms of lowering rates, or trying to predict the outcome of the November election. I'm not changing my business for that. I'm not changing portfolios markedly for that. Continuing to save in our retirement plans, continuing to save in our personal accounts. And yeah, maybe we'll go out to eat a little bit less or something like that, or not book the big vacation right away. Just wait and see. Prudent.
I like that. Thank you. Another theme that I thought I'd just kind of throw into the punch bowl, 2 things actually. One is on Jack's, you know, what's happening on the trends of in office, out of office. I was talking with a founder of a pretty large company last week. They had, during COVID, they did kind of like what we did, virtual, couple days a week in the office. And they've brought everybody back 3 days in the office because they really struggled with people that were decent performers before, but they just could not get them to perform in their home environment. Accountability was slipping and all that kind of stuff. And so what they did is they moved to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the office, Monday, Friday virtually. And he said it's really helped. So that's kind of an interesting take. I don't know if you guys have heard anything else like that. The second thing is we've talked about, hey, when things are tight and when things look a little scary out there or gray, what do? You got to increase your sales, like double down on that and what you're doing from a marketing perspective. And that doesn't mean that you have to be spending like a drunken sailor in marketing, but just be prudent, to Austin's terms, but also really looking at costs and taking a good eye. You aren't going to cut your way to greatness, but we probably got a little lazy, especially if you got any PPP money and some of that kind of windfall that was completely unexpected. Now it's time to probably take a sharper pencil. Don't cut important things, but some of the stuff that maybe we allowed to come in. Thoughts on that, Jack or Adam or Austin?
Go ahead. I've already talked a lot.
Okay. Yeah, then I'll chime in. Yeah, no, the back to the I'm really struggling as I'm sitting in my basement with a hat on, having not showered today. As Gary's sitting in his home office, may or may not have showered, who knows?
I have.
Okay, good for you. Well played, sir. I will be showering before my afternoon meeting. You kind of get back to the old and I'm gonna have a question to Austin at the end of all this too. That's unrelated. I promise. But you kind of get back to, okay, what's going on? Like the theory, it's like one of those things where in theory this should all work. If we're just focused on doing the right thing and focused on output and quality work, then we should be we should be okay. Like what's the problem? And at the same time, we kind of all got thrown into working from home without any real training on how to do it or how to manage it, right? So it's like that's why we've been struggling, a lot with what to do. Yet at the same time, and people have been managing, like most salespeople. I don't know about you guys, but most salespeople that I know work from their home office.
Yeah.
So like it's obviously a thing, that was acceptable for a lot of people. But I think the difference is they knew the deal going in. No output, no pay.
Yeah.
Like, okay. I'm sort of getting closer to being convinced that the fundamentals of making it work is, maybe you don't have to be as draconian as no output, no pay, but you might consider it, or at least have some aspect of no output. And obviously, if somebody doesn't do anything, they're not going to get paid. But I'm saying like, you kind of see a slowdown, or whatever. I think the second thing that we've noticed too is that it's funny, the millennials and the Gen Zers, I don't bash on them, but other people do bash on them because I still think it comes down to like, hey, work ethic is work ethic. You kind of either got it or you find it, and it doesn't really matter. But there's nuance between generations, but everybody said that my generation sucked ass, at the time. And right now I'm looking like a hero, relatively speaking, right? So one of our I don't know if you would categorize Stephanie as a millennial or a Gen Zer, but of her own fruition, read the book High Output Management by Andy Grove, the CEO of Intel, which she then encouraged all of us to read. I'd never read it, but I got to tell you, it was probably the best book I've ever read on like practical application of how to manage people that you could apply to either in the office or remote. Because I mean, if you think about it, like Intel had factories and a remote workforce across the world, you know, at the time. So like the concepts hold true. And guess, you know, high output, man, guess what Andy Grove, recommends, you know, output, you know, in quality, you know, and tying people's, you know, performance to that. So I think that I think the other piece of the coming back, you know, come back in the office to not, or to not come back in the office, you know, is it kind of comes back down to like what habits am I gonna put in place, you know, associated with it, in the sense of like, you know, there's not enough empirical data yet to reach a conclude. Like, in other words, like I haven't seen the Harvard Business Review study yet, and I'm sure maybe one will be forthcoming that says we measured, you know, remote workforce and then back to work mandates and have empirical evidence to prove the productivity difference, and we factored out all other variables. You know, no other management technique changed. I think, frankly, that's probably a bunch of bullshit. I think that probably the reality is that, you know, it's easier for people to implement management techniques when they're right next to you. And actually, it's kind of funny because one of the case studies that Andy actually highlights that confirms my suspicion, because, you know, I would like to rationalize and justify any belief that I have. That was funny, Austin. You should be laughing at that. Is that, you know, and remember, this book was written in 1983, you know, so it's not a new book, right? So what he points out, and he references like some big disruptors that happen, which is, you know, hey, companies are expanding globally, and two, the advent of email, you know, as a thing, like that's, you know, as a communication medium. And what he basically says is that the Japanese were in tight alignment and cleaned our clocks from a manufacturing perspective in the 50s and 60s, especially in his market, you know, which was the semiconductor and the memory market. But his reason for that had to do with in office, meaning like the Japanese, a team was all sitting at a table. You know, like literally everybody came in and was working at the same conference table. So me being able to share information with Jack and collaborate with Jack we were sitting at the same freaking conference table, you know, during the day, right? So he's like that was their deal. And then when the Japanese started to falter, and the Americans started to outpace them, is because the new technologies that allowed for collaboration where you didn't have to be at the conference table clean their clocks. You know, they didn't know how to adapt, you know, so they've obviously adapted, you know, since then. So I think it kind of comes down to, you know, frankly, I'll just call a foul on myself. We're too freaking lazy to figure out how to manage remotely. So it's just easier for us to take the path of last resistance and say, Austin, get your ass in the office, you know, because we're too lazy to figure out how to do it another way. You know, all else being equal in terms of like, you know, collaborating, offering up ideas, you know, there is something to having a real whiteboard. The virtual whiteboards are bullshit in my opinion, you know, but at the same time, like in terms of like when it comes to manufacturing widgets for a knowledge worker, I think you could do that remotely versus being in the office. I think we just are too lazy to figure out how to do it effectively. But I will ask my question, and you can elaborate on any of this that you want, Austin, at some point. You know, I think I've told you before that I'd be a horrible client because I'm a cash in the mattress, the market's been overvalued for frickin' ever as measured by price to earnings ratios. Yeah, like so, good thing I would have missed out on every bull run that's been in place since P ratios were 15 or whatever, right? But I guess if people are thinking, hey, I wonder what would be safer rather than other things, is there sort of any guidance, so that I'm not, doing GameStop. Is there any sort of advice in terms of taking your statement about the fundamentals, like taking that to the next level of like you're never going to go wrong typically, like you may go wrong like today, but not in the long run if you're focused on X, Y, or Z, so that people are at least armed with like, okay, my shit still meets X, Y, and Z. Like it may go down a little bit, it may go up a little bit, but at least it's not like 1,000 PE ratio, or something like that. Like I'm making that up, but you get what I'm saying.
And Austin, this is
I
the
do.
this is the part of the free financial guidance. It's not advice. So just so you know, we do a lot of that on the legal and accounting side of things. So welcome
Yeah,
to
this
the
is not
club.
advice.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting, and I'm glad you asked that. Again, I'm a data guy, and I'm going to touch on that in a second as it ties to the work from home. But I mentioned, I've been doing this job for 25 years. We call that 300 months. It's 305, 307. A little more than a third of those months were down, 109, 110. And I want to be a data guy. I'm a CPA as well. I can't help but think numbers. I see and think in spreadsheets. But Adam, to your question, and let's take a client, a young business or a middle-aged business owner, successful, they've built up some money, maybe they're 70, 75% stock. They've got time, they've got money, they get it. We can show them on a spreadsheet, and this is a blip like all the other times, it'll come back. Look 5 years, 10 years down the road. The opportunity for folks like me, anybody, we get the calls during those 109 months. Nobody ever calls me in the other 196 months and says, wow, the market's really up. I think it's going to double from here. I'm going to send you more money. I love you. Even my mother hasn't made that call. I've never had it. But I can assure you, sitting in the Frankfurt airport Monday, flying back home, going to Boston, I had a 2-hour window where I've got cell signal, I'm not on a plane, and I got email, call, email. I'm just sitting over in one of those phone booths. My family's looking at me. Everybody, I don't want to say they wanted to sell, but they were a little scared, wanted my take on it. So the opportunity is there. We want to react. It's human nature. Too many advisors forget it's not a binary outcome. It's not, I'm all in, I'm all out. So if you're 75% stock and you, whether it's me or anybody else, you believe the long term, you get it, but it's just unsettling to you because maybe you are worried about your accounting firm, or your manufacturing firm, or things are a little tight and you're just unsure and you don't like this volatility, fine. Then go to 60% stock or go to 50% stock, but you don't have to sell everything, right? You can adjust the scale a little bit. And I think that varies by person and by situation. That would be my advice for somebody, as you say, you're a cash under the mattress guy. In my gut, I want to be that way. I know better. But I probably started 25 or 30% stock when I was 30, just until I built the comfort. And it took time for me, even being in this business. I think that's where the advice comes in, because each person is unique. So that would be my answer to anybody. Don't look at it as I'm in stocks, I'm out of stocks. Find that place where you're comfortable. And let's say I'm right. The market rallies onward and it's up. Okay, so the market goes up 10 or 15% over the next year or two, and you were 50% stock instead of 70% stock. So what?
Right.
So what? Right? 20% of your money missed out on a 15% return. That's 3%. I will almost guarantee you nobody has a financial plan that's predicting they earn 15% anyway. So they'd still be ahead of goal. And you can reassess at that point.
So I'm going to give a quick unsolicited plug for you guys, because I called Ben on Monday. I'm like, all right, dude, because I've been through way even before you, Austin, like, 87, like, let's go back a ways. And what's funny is in every bull market, I had financial advisors that lost me money. No joke. I wish I was joking. And I was pretty aggressive, especially in early 2000 and before 2000. But like these jokers were losing me money. I'm like, so zero confidence. So I'm with you, Adam. Like, and in 09, when everything was crashing, 08, I pulled everything out of the market and I said, put it in money markets. And like our entire company blew up, 30 million bucks gone. Like, I mean, so we've been through some crazy stuff. But so I said, Ben, the little bit I got left, like, don't lose it. What are you doing? And so he goes, actually, if you look at your performance, like we've got you in stuff that actually makes money in the volatility. Like we have you in a portfolio because of your risk tolerance. You're not going to be getting high flyers, but you're actually doing way better than everybody else right now that has been trying to chase some of the technology stuff or whatever. And like, it's like, all right, thank you, but there's a trust thing that goes on. And I trusted all my other people before. They just broke trust because they didn't do a very good job. And a lot of this is outside of our control, but like, it's a real deal. So I just want to say thank you, Austin and team and Ben and Keith and all those guys. I do appreciate it because it makes it easier for me to sleep at night.
Well, no, and I appreciate that. Just a commentary on our industry and that comment. It is, I'm not talking about picking one stock or betting the farm or, trading. I'm talking about investing. I'm gonna use that same 25 years. I did a little spreadsheet. Again, I'm old school. I know I could have asked, AI. I did that too, but I had to test it because the CPA in me didn't believe it. But anyway, money invested January 1st, 1999. Left untouched. No additions, no subtractions, reinvest dividends, just in the S&P index. So that's fairly well diversified. And, I'm not, in terms of an index, I don't mean that's a portfolio, but it's 6.5 times that today. And 2 weeks ago, it was 5% higher than that. It baffles me when I hear somebody lost money during that period, right? Because a well-diversified portfolio that from start to finish on a 25-year period is worth 6.5 times more with dividends reinvested. The only two outcomes that can cause you to lose money are improper allocation or you were timing the market. Every other result of a diversified portfolio, I'm not saying they all made 6.5 times. I'm saying directionally stocks went up over that time. And so a diversified portfolio should have. I did want to make one comment, if anybody's watching this, that somewhat speaks about the volatility in the market. I say this to clients all the time. I'm listening to myself now and I'm going, it's okay. It's long term and got all these numbers and spreadsheet talk. Honestly, I think I'm pretty boring. And I say that lovingly of myself. And you go, well, you can't be as smart as these people on TV. I'm not. But the difference is the people on TV, they're not in the financial advisory business.
Yeah.
You know what they are in the business of? They're in the business of selling ads.
Yeah.
So if they brought somebody 10 times smarter than me that agreed with me on TV and they said stoically, well, you know, the market's predicted 16 of the last 8 recessions. There's only been 3 in the last 25 years. The market's up 6.5 times. I don't think all these other companies would advertise because people wouldn't be calling in and logging on to their accounts or calling their advisors like you did. It gets sensationalized. And they're in the business of sensationalizing. I think from age whatever, I'll say 10 because I wasn't paying attention before that, 10 to 30, I maybe saw breaking news 5 times in my life. I mean, it's breaking news, you know, U.S. wins gold in the 200. I mean, whatever. I mean, we have breaking news on everything every day. It's about selling ads.
Yeah.
It's not about helping you with your money. It's not about telling you what's going on in the economy. I really believe it's about selling ads.
Yeah. I think you're right as a former ad guy. So I can confirm that. There is a comment and a question in here from John, which is really interesting. So this is really directed to you, Austin. It says, what are your thoughts about the significant pullback in so many stocks? Intel down 62% year to date, Lululemon down 54% year to date, Boeing down 37% year to date, Sophie down 35%, Starbucks down 23, Nike down 33, Walgreens down 59, CVS down 28. The market indices are being driven by just a few AI stocks. And how do you account for a consumer's savings being completely tapped out and rising defaults? Do you believe rising unemployment will be the match light that lights the fuse for stagflation or recession? If consumer accounts for 70% of GDP, what happens when people stop spending? A lot of questions in there.
A lot of questions. I won't comment on individual stocks. I'll say very good points on all of those stocks, but I'm just glancing at my screen real quick. You know, Eli Lilly up 46%, Lockheed Martin up 21%. Those aren't AI stocks. Those aren't tech stocks. I alluded to my data, building a spreadsheet. This ties in from the work from home. There's some efficiency going on with things like AI too, right? So to find a website with the correct data, download it into Excel, do a quick formula and be able to tell you, oh, 110 months were down out of the last 307 or whatever. That probably took 20 or 30 minutes. Asking a chatbot took 3 seconds. That might tie into some of the work from home efficiencies too. Adam, I was going to say on that, I think it comes down to work ethic, and you can possibly drive work ethic with how you reward people and compensate people. But I don't know, some people work from home, they're just going to do what it takes. I'm sure there are others that are the antithesis of that. So back to the questions. Yes, we're a consumer economy. Yes, that is a concern if consumers are spending less. But the Fed is likely, I shouldn't say they will, the Fed is likely to cut rates. I think they will likely do it more than once. I don't know whether it'll be in 3 months, 3 quarters, 3 years, but that will spur growth. I mean, the cost of capital gets less, companies can invest more, people can refinance those mortgages. It's the business cycle. I'm just looking down the road saying, golly, a lot of these companies are making money right now despite high interest rates, despite all of these negatives we're hearing about. What would happen if their cost of capital were lower? What would happen if inflation did come down to the Fed's target of 2%, that we got a little relief, and wages did go up at 3, but inflation was only at 2? I'm just looking forward saying I'm hopeful and optimistic that things will be better. That's not to say that it's all rosy right now. But time is our friend typically.
I'm going to chime in. One other thing comes to mind, and this kind of goes back to your, hey, breaking news, and since when you were younger and how frequent that is now versus back then. I remember talking to a guy that launched his business like right after, or maybe it was actually it was a couple months before the Great Recession hit in the first salvo in September of 2008. And as things got darker and worse, and he was doing retail stuff and like baby stuff. And he said, man, I had to just turn off the news. And I just had to focus on what I could control. That's it. I had no headspace whatsoever for all this other stuff going on. So he said, I just got hyper focused. And actually, I think that's really good advice. It doesn't mean that we put our heads in the sand and do the ostrich thing that Adam talks about, but there is an element to what can you control. Focus on what you can control. And if your head is full of trash because of the media full of trash and trying to get you to buy, if it bleeds, it leads kind of thing that gets everybody all jacked up, you're not going to be producing the output that you possibly could. And your people aren't either.
Yeah. Well, Billy, there's nothing like gold.
Yeah. I'm not making a comment there. Ask me one time off camera about the 17-day dilemma with gold. But anyway, so I have a question for you all and a commentary, and I use this with friends, clients, family, whoever. Why is inflation a bad thing? This is usually, I'm with a client, it usually works out, I'm in like a restaurant or a coffee shop, and they say, inflation's terrible. I'm like, you're in a restaurant, so there's a server, a manager, a bartender, a dishwasher, all of that. Let's assume they're all trying to support their family and get ahead in life. Which one of them hopes that 1 year from today, they're making less, doing the same job? I've never met anybody that said, I'll bag groceries or be a consultant or be a marketing person or own a CPA. Never met a single person that says, I'm going to work and do the best I can so that a year from now, I'm making the same or less. I've never met anybody with that goal at any job. That's inflation. And so if we use that restaurant scenario, if everybody there hopes to make a little bit more, well, in order for that to happen, if nothing changes, then the owner of that restaurant is going to make less the next year because he or she is paying their people more. Well, they don't want to make any less either, so they're going to have to raise prices. And I'm going to have to pay more. But I'm going to be able to do that because hopefully I'm hyper-focused and I'm making more. I say all that somewhat because it's an election season too. We all want to say we're right or left or this. No, when it comes to the economy, we're kind of all on the same page. We might have different visions of how we get there. But inflation in and of itself isn't a bad thing. High inflation above wages, or the increase in wages, is a bad thing. But mild inflation is actually a pretty good thing. And that tends to be what drives the market anyway. I just throw that out there. Kind of something I don't think most people think about.
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it, Austin, with the not out of control inflation, because the opposite of that is the whatever it is, the stagflation or whatever,
right?
Or deflation. But I think the thing that I, as a consumer, find frustrating, and I, as a so if you got an opinion on this, share it. Meaning, like, you got data, not Austin's opinion. Yeah. It would be a scenario where let's just say hypothetically, I'm a large retail company that happens to be headquartered, somewhere in the Southwest, that happens to be in a little place in Arkansas. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying hypothetically, and at some point I probably did have some supply chain issues, but I'm kind of a dick when it comes to buying stuff, Austin. Like I'm pretty good about beating suppliers up on the pricing side of the equation,
Right.
If, like if I'm posting record profits relative to my sales, I can't argue that money went back to the employees because I'm posting record profits relative to my sales. And it would be okay. Like if my sales went up and my absolute profit went up, of course that would happen because I'm still maintaining sort of the same pricing structure. Otherwise, I'm giving something back, right? But if I'm posting, like if I went from like a 10% operating profit to an 11% profit on one of the largest companies in the world, then I can't really make an argument other than my inflation is caused by corporate freaking greed, and that's not super awesome.
No, I'm not saying that.
I know you're not saying that either.
And so in that case, no, it doesn't help. It doesn't help the employees unless they also went up in their wages. But on the flip side of that, that does help the stock market side of things and the owners of that company, who hopefully then the wealth effect are spending more money, which creates more jobs for that company, and it allows their earnings to further increase, and hopefully the wages of the people that do work there to increase. That symbiotic relationship is what I was referencing. And you're right, it's not cause and effect, and it's not always direct, but I do think it moves through by and large.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair.
Well, we did get a stock tip from Joseph. He said, buy socks. I'm just saying. That's not from us. That's from Joseph. It's on you, Joseph. Goes down. We absolve ourselves from any responsibility, and Jack has all the legal mumbo jumbo to go with it. Well, Austin, thank you. Anybody still on here? I mean, we still got 24 folks on here, but if you want, hit us up with some Q&A. It's free. It's still free. There has been no inflation on the price of this webinar since we started. It's still zero. So you got yourself to blame if you don't speak up. But thank you for taking time out of your day to help us with this. It's been good. Also, next week, I'm probably not going to be on here because we're celebrating our 41st anniversary a week.
Congratulations.
So there we go. We're going to be gone. But in 2 weeks, Lord willing, we've got the founder of SEO National, a guy named Damon Burton. They have the lock, as far as I'm concerned, on effective SEO, performance, search and engine optimization for anybody that's got websites and that sort of thing. He has really been, their firm has been a game changer for us. And so we'll have him on. He speaks all over the world, actually. He's out of Utah, but really, really sharp. So he's going to join us next week. We'll figure out what we're going to do. And Jack and Adam will take it. But anyway, Austin, thank you again. It's always good seeing you. Welcome back.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll tell Ben that you did a good job so that you can come back again. So
even if I didn't, don't tell him I'm horrible at this, please.
No, we're good. You did a good job. You're just like, you did a good job. Also,
okay, is it fair to say I'm nervous because I've never done this before?
No, you actually did great.
You did great.
I did not think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, guys.
You just shut that
My ego
imposter
remains
syndrome out.
intact. Yeah, okay.
No imposter syndrome allowed. No, you did great. You just be who you are.
It's been fun.
Also, we're going to have coming up here couple guys from Clar Ventures where they are really, really good at cost optimization, especially people that are shipping a lot of stuff, et cetera. But they're really good. And so they're going to be joining us one of these days as well. Anything else, Jack, Adam, Austin, before we sign off?
I'm good. I
I'm good.
appreciate
Again,
it
thank
all.
you guys.
Yeah, I mean, and Austin, yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, you wouldn't be able to tell that this is your first time at all. I mean, most people will stumble, they'll use a lot of and ums, and I do that. Sometimes I have to put in front of me, do not say or so that I see that in front of me when I'm looking into the camera.
Okay.
So
But
very
I've
well
got
done.
notes here like that.
And we'd love to have you on at another time down the road.
Yeah.
When it's time for an update.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, next time the market drops 5% on a Monday, I mean,
All right.
Excellent.
Yeah. Adam, go get yourself a shower. I can smell you over here. So
I'm going to. I'm going to. I was hoping that the rain would cease a little bit, so I can get a run in.
Go get your run.
Morning. Yeah. So.
yeah, well, hey, I admire your training. Oh, by the way, so Adam's getting ready for a half Ironman, which is no small feat. So super proud of you. Don't wreck my bike. I'm just saying, don't wreck my bike.
I got you covered on that.
But there's another friend of the firm named Johan Kornoff, and he's going to be in town the week of September the 18th. He's going to be with some of our clients. He's going to be with us. He's going to be with us at the Whitewater Center for our podcast. We're doing a thing, but he's getting ready to do the Munga, which is a 700-mile race through the desert on your bike. There can be no help at all. And you are on your own, and it's 120 degrees when they start. It's in the hot, and then it gets down to freezing at night. And I'm like, dude, are you serious? But he's serious because 2.5 years ago, he actually died, and he had 90% of his lungs that were fibrosis, and they gave him less than a year to live. And he was a big mountain bike racer before that. And unexplainable medical miracle, he has brand new lungs. And so, but he is training like a fiend. So it'll be fun. And he's actually, you can track and follow him. They're doing a documentary on it. So I hope he makes it through it. I hope he stays alive, because that's like no joke. I mean, 89 people last year did it, and they had the highest percentage finish. They had 62, I think, percent finish it.
Oh, wow.
So kind of
Yeah.
crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy. So celebrate life, even though it's raining today. It's going to be sunny tomorrow or soon. Whether it's tomorrow or not, I don't know. But anyway, thanks again, guys. We will put this up on the BGW CPA YouTube channel later on today, and the Shoemaker folks have the same thing on their site. So we'll put this up for anybody wanting to watch it, including Jack's son. So, all right, you guys have a wonderful day.
All right.
Thank
See you
you.
guys.
Thanks,
See y'all.
guys.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Austin. Bye.